This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Travis Greenlee. He's a master lifestyle business growth mentor coach. And welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful, man. Thanks for having me.
We do have your URL below, lifestylebusinessquest.com. That'll be fully clickable. For those of you who are interested, you don't have to write that down. You'll be able to click through on the podcast description. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch at the moment. And then we'll be on all the other podcast platforms that you can listen to or watch a podcast. We are a featured podcast on the Newsly network. And if you check out that coupon code of Ghost, you can listen to us on that network later tonight. But welcome to the show. I mean, one of the things that we were going to talk about is from cancer to coaching, how cancer saved your life and gave you the courage to grow your multi-million-dollar coaching business. And just to reveal to the audience, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm age 56 to age 27. I had a level 3 sarcoma. So I'm very
Whoa.
much in tune with, I think, what you're going to talk about tonight. But yeah, there's just a couple of things before we go into your story. I always ask anybody that's on the podcast a couple questions to start with. Like, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Mm, right on. So I think mainly the primary motivator now really is, and I know it sounds a little corny, but it really is to help people, to make a difference in other people's lives. And we'll get into my whole cancer story in just a bit. But I think one of the reasons why I feel the way that I do in terms of inspiring others and serving others is because I've been to the mat, man. I mean, I almost lost everything through this cancer. And it was just a wake up call in so many different respects in terms of my values and the way I look at life. And it's not just about me anymore. When I was in my 20s, hell yeah, I drove the nice car and all these wonderful things. Will still do. But that stuff was so important back in the day. Now it's not so much about that. Now it's not so much about like the stuff and the things. It really is about enhancing lives. When I see somebody else light up and I see them get inspired and I see them be able to create the lives that they want by coaching and serving others, there's just no better feeling. It's the ultimate high, if you will.
Yeah, it's like paying it forward. A lot
Yeah.
of times as a music producer and a podcaster, uh, part of what I like to do is just talk to people.
Yeah.
And when you're working with somebody like as a music producer, you're kind of like a teacher. Like
Yeah.
you're working with an artist, but you're kind of teaching them, how to present their idea in the best light, right? To get it over, to
Yeah.
get that, to get the hook over, like find what's like what are the nuggets in this thing they have.
Yeah.
And I think that's why people like to teach or coach or be mentors or senseis. That's why you do it, right?
Exactly. Like I said, there's no better drug in the world. There's no better high that I've certainly experienced than just lighting somebody else up. I mean, through our experiences and through our training and just everything that we've done over the years to be able to take that and to be able to serve others. It's just a fantastic feeling. And the beautiful thing with this is the better you are at it and the more that you really care, the more money you make. It's a direct relationship. So it truly is a win-win deal. And then, of course, not only the money, but then it's the lifestyle. It's the freedom. And we'll get all into that today in terms of our brand and what we're doing with the Lifestyle Business Quest. But to be able to have more time and more space and more freedom to really call your own shots, to do the things that you want to do. As an example, I live in a little ski town called Steamboat Springs here in Colorado. I skied 110 days this season, right? So, man, I went after it and just got back from Breckenridge yesterday. We were there all last week, just mountain biking and hanging out and traveling. And so it's freedom. I mean, for those of you who are listening, maybe you have a job. I get it. I was there way back in the day, but I can tell you, having that freedom to do your thing, to call your own shot, and to spend your time doing the things that you want to do with whom you want to do, whenever you want to do it, there's just nothing better, man. There just really isn't.
Well, there's a lot of peace of mind, and because if you're working for someone else, and like that's their, it's their goal. I mean, you have a goal, you're getting your paycheck, but is it really your idea? Is it really your feelings or what you wanted to do when you're a kid? It's like what I like about dealing with creative people is they have that child like curiosity and it didn't leave.
Yeah.
That they still have it and they're still willing to kind of, be the one that puts their hand up or push it. push that idea out regardless of what, and the impact is, because a lot of times it's like the vulnerability of it. A
Right.
lot of people are scared to be vulnerable. The singer songwriter, like, we have to be vulnerable.
Sure.
That's our trade.
Right.
But like a
Exactly.
lot, but it's for a lot of other people, it is their trade too. It's like how you bring your secret sauce of you
Yeah.
to the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. Your creativity, like you say, creativity and being able to be in that state. It's just like gratitude. When we're either in that state of being creative or we're in that state of being grateful, we can't be upset. We can't be afraid. We can't be overwhelmed. We can't be all these negative emotions because scientifically based that we can only have it one at a time. So when we can get into that state of just being creative and being in flow and
Yeah.
growing and so on and so forth, it's pretty sweet, man.
Well, the flow state is kind of like a staple of a lot of the creative people I talk to.
Yeah.
Um, and this idea of like yeah, I get back to like Victorian poetry is what I got keyed into when I was a kid. And I was like, why would you like that? You like, I think you would like hip hop. Like, why? I like both. But I like Blake and Tennyson, Wordsworth, and all those people. And I like the idea of the muse. Like this idea, there's this universal thing you can tap into, this muse. And it's really like the outside of you and the inside of you. In your subconscious, you have these subconscious things, your dream state, whatever. But you tap into this feeling and you can, it's almost like it's coming from outside, but it's also coming from inside. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the creative people can kind of feel that and figure out how to, be in that process flow, in this flow state.
Yeah, totally. Flows where it's at. I mean, it sounds so simple, right? To be able to get into it, we talk about the benefits of flow in terms of performance and creativity and just joy, passion and bliss and all these wonderful things. But we are human, right? And we've got all these fears, we've got overwhelms, we've got outdated belief systems, we've got all these things going on under the surface that we tend to try and operate on top of. And of course, that's what keeps people, so many people, just miserable. They're not achieving what they want to achieve. They're not reaching their goals, whether that's better relationships or more money or more freedom or, a beautiful record or whatever it might be. We tend to get in our own ways pretty easily. So it's all about, I think, just surrendering, like let go and then just trusting that process to be able to get outside of our own heads, right? And our own
Yeah.
emotions to get back to that state of flow. And there's all kinds of things you can do, to be able to do this, specific things. But you're right. I think that's from a creative perspective, whether you're a musician or an entrepreneur or a coach or anybody that's out there being creative, like sharing their own vulnerability, right? Being transparent, being raw, putting themselves out there. It takes courage. And so for those of you that are out there and you're thinking, oh man, maybe I'm a little afraid, maybe I'm a little upset, maybe I'm kind of in my own way. It's natural. And the good news is there's all kinds of ways to be able to move beyond that. And the key is once you do, and once you start to experience that, that's when the joy and the happiness and the bliss and everything begins to show up.
Like the law of attraction, I kind of come from a Eastern perspective, but the idea is like if you put yourself out there, if you put your ideas out into the world, that there are people who are going to gravitate toward it. But if
Yeah.
you're so scared of what is uniquely you, right? And
Yeah.
you don't want to present it because maybe it's not what's going on, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, my idea doesn't match the current state of what I see of all the ideas on social media. It's
Oh,
not, it's
well,
not,
and
it's not a cat video.
You got it. And it's this whole comparison thing. I mean, one of the biggest challenges, if you are the dark side of social media, is we are just all comparing ourselves to everybody else. And of course, everybody else is, and we are too, just playing our highlight reels. Anytime that we share something on social, it's certainly not the challenges we're facing and the behind the scenes. It's like, the vacations and the this and that. And so we start going through the feeds and we start feeling like that, like, well, what's wrong with me? My best buddy, he's out in Europe right now. My other guy's in Hawaii right now, and I'm sitting at home working. So what the heck's wrong? And so we do this comparison thing, which is so destructive in so many different ways, as opposed to just realizing like, hey, we're human. We've all got our stuff. If we could just pick our lane and drive and stay in that lane, there's just so much more happiness. And I see this in my clients a lot. I work with a lot of passionate coaches, whether it's a life coach or business coach or sales or performance, or, these guys are all about helping and serving other people. But one of the biggest challenges that we find is this whole feeling of not good enough. Right.
Mhm.
Like they feel like, oh my gosh, who am I to go out and to share my advice and to share my experiences? And not only that it's like, are people really going to pay me for this?
Yeah,
And
imposter
those
syndrome.
types of things.
It's like
Yeah,
imposter syndrome that stops somebody
totally.
from actualizing.
Yep.
Because like I've run into a lot of kids, I'm 56, that they were really good guitar players, but like I'm not Jimmy Page. So
Yeah.
as soon as you start saying you're not Jimmy Page, like you're already putting the kibosh on it, right?
Yeah.
Like
uh,
because there's already a Jimmy Page. You were never gonna be Jimmy Page, right? You were gonna be you.
Yeah.
But because you kept on thinking you want to be Jimmy Page, it's like, well, you're not gonna win that, right?
Right.
So
So I might as well quit, right? If I'm not going to
that's
be
what you
Jimmy
do.
Page, but
And
there's
then you
only
try and start a
one Jimmy
business.
Page, and
It's
will
just
only be one Jimmy Page.
Yeah, and then you see these guys like they never pick their guitar up again. They never pick up the bass. They just forget it. And they're like, if you have the joy of doing something like, you're a painter, you're somebody that does like theater, but you're doing small theater, but you go out there and you keep on doing it. There's a joy in this being like in it and showing up,
Yeah.
and eventually your craft will get to a certain point where things start to happen.
Yeah.
Over time, if you believe in yourself, the opportunities, it's like the law of attraction. It's not like it's just by accident. It's because you actually put like 10,000 hours in, right?
Yeah.
You did the work. If you do the work, you will benefit from the work if you believe in it.
Yeah. And if you stick with it, it's we talk about mastery. What is really mastery? You mentioned 10,000 hours. It's doing something over and over and over and over, and especially the simple things over and over and over and over again, to where it just becomes innate. It becomes habitual. It just becomes really who you are. And you look at these, the Olympics, right? We just came through the Olympics now, and you see some of
An
these just
example.
amazing athletes, right? Like, holy crap, how do they do what they do? But they've done the work and they've created the mastery and they put in the time. So I think, to your point, rather than comparing ourselves to other people and saying, "Oh, I'll never be the Michael Phelps of the world," right? So why even swim or whatever it might be? It's not so much about other people, it's about our own personal growth. That's truly where the excitement comes from, and the passion. And it could be incremental growth, right? We could have these big quantum leaps and see some major things happening, which does happen, or the day after day after day, 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. And then realize that that's truly where our power is. It's not outside of us with all the stuff and having the things and, being quote unquote successful on the outside. It's about internally and how we grow and how we're growing on a consistent basis, because that's where the power is. And when we can reconnect to that, it's passion, right? It truly is bliss. We don't need to have all the stuff. I mean, all the stuff is nice, right? I mean, I've certainly got all the material things and have over the years, but what I've realized, even because I have that, is that stuff isn't that important. What's really important is, like you had mentioned, creativity, getting
Yeah.
out of our own way, focusing on growth and mastery and expansion on a continuous basis. And then again, as I do, and with the coaches that I work with, we get to help other people to do that as well. So it's not only ourselves, it starts there, but then it duplicates and expands and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's flow. That's what allows us to get in that state of creativity and flow. And again, when you're either in gratitude or flow, in that creative state, you can't be upset. You can't be afraid. You can't be fear based. You can't be any of these negative types of emotions that so many people are absolutely consumed with. So if you are, and if you're listening, there are ways to be able to move beyond this. And it's not hard, but we got to have
Mhm.
that process, got to have the systems to be able to get out of our own way.
Yeah, you need that kind of roadmap, because a
Yeah.
lot of times, if you're an author, you start to world build, you start to character design, you start to, you're a musician, you start putting basic tracks down. Like there's always like a path, but some people don't know how to get to that. It's like I don't know
Right.
how to get to the character design. I don't know how to get to the basic tracks. I don't know how to get to the actual outline. And
Yeah.
so they need somebody like yourself to kind of guide. And like, what was your backstory to want to be that guy?
Great question. Well, I started out as crazy back in my mid 20s. So I'm about your age. I'm 57, right? So we're both coupled of old wise guys, right? We've been around the block a time or two. But back in my first career in my mid 20s, I was a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch and living in Southern California. I mean, I drove the convertible and lived in Newport Beach and thought I had it made. And then I was diagnosed, kind of back to your topic here, with stage 4 melanoma cancer, and it was bad. I mean, my oncologist gave me a 50% chance of living beyond 2 years, and it was a scary time, right? Again, they gave me all the surgeries, and I went through chemo, and I'm just nasty, nasty stuff. But as I begin to get through that, as you begin to come through that, I began to look at, okay, so what is next? Because I didn't have direction. I knew I didn't want to go back to corporate. I didn't want to go back to all that stress and the overwhelm of financial advisor. I mean, again, it was nice. I had the stuff. I had the money, but I realized at that point, like, hey, this shit doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter in the big scheme of things, the important things. What really matters, certainly today and then back then as well, is freedom.
Hmm.
Being able to call our shots, to do the things that we really want to do. So is an interesting story. I was just coming out of the cancer and I was in a transitional phase. I wasn't sure what the next stage was. And I went golfing. So I was golfing here in Steamboat. I live in a little ski resort in Colorado, and went golfing one day, and they hooked us up. So I was there alone. They hooked me up with another older gentleman named Sandy. And so, yeah, we decided to play together. We got to talking, and crazy coincidence, right? Again, if you believe in coincidences, but Sandy Vilas, we started talking. He's like, well, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm kind of in transition. He's like, well, I am the leader. I basically started the life and business coaching industry. I'm the pioneer of this thing. I'm the first president of the International Coaching Federation. He was the CEO of Coach U, which is the first coaching school that taught coaches how to become coaches. And I mean, how crazy is that? How random? And he's like, well, you ought to be a life coach or business coach. I'm like, well, what's a life coach? Again, this is a long time ago. Now 8 of my neighbors are life coaches. They're everywhere, right? So it's grown like crazy. But I was like, well, what is it? And he started telling me about it. I'm like, well, that sounds sort of interesting. And he's like, hey, I got this convention down in Denver this weekend. I got the big suite. We're hanging out. He's like, come on down, party with me. Come meet some folks. I'm like, hell yeah. I'm like, I'm game. So went down, brought my wife down, and we met everybody and all the players and learned and grew. And I was like, this is it. I mean, hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so I took my background from Merrill Lynch in terms of business growth and scale and strategy and so on and so forth. The internet was just beginning to take off. So Charles Schwab and online trading. I mean, this is way before social media. This is like way back in the day. But I got excited and I said, you know what, there's something here. There's an opportunity to be able to get online. And again, I mean, I live in a town of 10,000 people. So I had to be able to do it online and figure out a way to do it. So I started building courses and training and systems and lead gen and the whole 9 yards. And it's just continued to evolve and evolve and evolve. And now we've got AI and we've got all these amazing opportunities that we didn't have back in the day to be able to grow a successful business. So it's been an amazing ride. And I can tell you, no lie, there's been ups and there's certainly been downs through this process as well. And so, I've definitely had the dark night of the soul. In fact, many of them over the years, but overall, it's been a fantastic ride. I'm financially free. We've helped over 5,000 clients now. We've got over 500 earning $250,000 a year or more. And so it's pretty fulfilling in terms of being able to help and serve others who then take that to go and help and serve others as well. And back to your question, it all came from the cancer. It came from that cancer, which in the time was a scary thing, as you know, right? Again, when you went through yours, it was like, whoa, I would do the whole victim thing. Why me? I'm so young. And why do I have to go through all this? And I'm a good guy and all that stuff. But now looking back on it, now, 25, 30 years later, I look at that as the biggest miracle in my life because it changed my trajectory from hardcore stockbroker charge, let's go get them, to soft, free, living in the mountains. I mean, I met my wife here skiing on Christmas Day 21 years ago. We were up on the mountain together, just met, and right. So we've got this beautiful life now because of the cancer, because of the challenges, because of these, seemingly negative things in the moment. Again, when we connect the dots later, shows that those are the biggest miracles.
I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's like this idea that your life is always got to be like this perfect thing. Like I think a lot of people make a lot, being a songwriter and also in the creative space, it's like a lot of times it's the trauma informed situation
Yeah.
that creates the work, right? That creates the opportunity. A lot of times, like it's not the happiest points in your life that usually generate the best song.
Right.
And I found that having cancer myself is like it put me in a situation where when I beat it, I said, well, why should I be scared of doing things? So I actually lived in Japan for 2 years. I got married. I was able to, get into, being instead of being in the back in my bands, I got to the front. I started, singing the songs, writing the songs, and doing the podcast. And pre-cancer, I wouldn't have done that. I was
Mm,
kind of somebody who would like to be in the back,
mhm,
wouldn't want to go to the front. And
mhm.
it changed my mindset in terms of like, what am I scared of? If I can beat
Yeah.
cancer, then I can do anything. And
Exactly.
I was like, why not?
That's so huge. And I think for our, the listeners today, if you're going through a challenge, if certainly if you've been through a challenge, you know what we're talking about. I mean, this is like the ultimate growth phase. This is rapid growth. I always say breakdown, breakthrough is like two sides of the hand, right? You've got your breakdown, and the bigger the breakdown brings, the bigger the breakthrough on the other side of that. If we could just have the belief, if we could just have the trust, if we could just surrender to the process, that's truly where the magic shows up. But so many of us get so caught in just like the day to day and the pain and the victimhood, and it's so wrong and it should be easier and all these types of things, as opposed to realizing again what a miracle we have in this life.
Yeah.
And I know it's crazy because, man, I mean, the world's crazy. We got politics, we got all kinds of shit going on right now. But to keep that mind on what you want as opposed to what you fear or what you really don't want in life, continue to move in that direction. Again, there's so many options. There's so many opportunities here. If we could just get out of our own way.
But you gotta, the abundant mindset instead of like this mindset where you're continually lacking. A lot of times because it's a comparison trap, and then you don't think you made any wins because you're not Bill Gates, right? You're not Zuckerberg. So of course, if you put it in that category, well, you didn't win at that level. No, you didn't. But maybe you won these little micro wins. There are a lot
Yeah.
of people, they shoot themselves in the foot because they're always down on themselves. And you gotta take the win when you get it.
Yeah.
You gotta let it kind of take it and actually propel you,
Yeah.
toward the next thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not going to be perfect. A lot of what we do is happy accidents. Like as a creative person, the planned thing I wanted to do usually does not work as well as the unplanned thing that comes out of nowhere. And if
Right.
just no one,
Spontaneity.
yeah, no
Yeah.
one when to go with it. Like you knew when to go with. Oh, you met the guy on the golf course. It's like I'm going to go to that party.
Yeah.
There are people who say, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to go." Then they never take advantage of the things that are brought to them. They don't pick it up, right? And
Right.
so if you don't pick up the little hints that the world gives you, then you might lose out because you're always like, "Oh, I don't know, that's not going to work." So immediately you say, "Well, it ain't going to work," so you don't go.
It's fear, and I see it all day long, every day. People that I talk to are like, "Why should I? Well, I'm not sure it'll work out. Why put in the effort? Why have a podcast? Why work so hard? Why put so much time into it? Like, does anybody care? Is anybody listening? Is it like that kind of stuff?" As opposed to, look at this amazing technology that we have available today, and how much easier podcast has gotten, and we can start it on a shoestring budget, and we can be able to get our message out and really make a difference in people's lives. And right, so it's the glass half full or the glass half empty, like which way you're looking at things. And so much of that, again, the half empty is, it's conditioning, it's outdated belief systems, it's how we're wired. We could go all the way back and psychoanalyze the whole situation. But the reality is like, look, we are human beings, we've all got our shit. We all do. And just a matter of like, okay, so we realize it, no shame, no blame. Let's just figure out what works for us in terms of having our needs met, keeping our focus on what we want, and go to work, man. Just get that work done consistently, day in and day out.
So what kind of challenges are you facing as a coach now that there's so many people, like you mentioned, like even in your own neighborhood, there's a lot more, there are a lot more coaches,
Yeah.
but
Oh, gosh.
the world is pretty big
Yeah.
and you're not just in Colorado, you're all over the world on the net,
Right.
but there's so many more coaches, like there's so many more podcasts. So how what are your challenges, when you're facing today based on the saturation in the market?
You got it. Great question. And it's something that we're all, as coaches, experiencing right now. I think the main theme, in fact, I just did another podcast earlier today on this, is we are in a trust recession. A trust recession. And basically, what that means is nobody trusts each other anymore. We are not only skeptical, we are cynical. Right. And so think about, we don't want to be sold. We've been sold to. We've bought the programs, we've hired the coaches, we've done this stuff, and maybe haven't gotten the results that were promised because there are just so many people out there now, especially post-COVID. That's when I really saw it and really felt it is, man, COVID. Now you got all these people coming onto Zoom, right? They're all coming into the virtual marketplace and they're quote unquote coaches and not certified, had no skill sets. I mean, maybe take one course and hang the shingle that they're a coach. And so that becomes your competition,
Mhm.
all around the world online. So oversaturation for sure. The second thing is trust. Nobody trusts each other anymore. And rightly so. Again, with this political environment we've had for years, we had COVID, we've got the print media. I mean, it's a circus, man. Again, it's just crazy out there. So we got to realize it for what it is. There are a lot of people like, oh, it's over. It's done. Coaching is dead. It was a great industry, but no longer anymore. And I couldn't disagree with that any further. Again, coaching is still absolutely booming. It's grown quickly, of course, over the last 4 and 5 years post COVID. But the thing is, most coaches that I see and most coaches that I talk to and experience have more of a coaching hobby than they do
Mhm.
a coaching business.
Career.
And so they're out tinkering. Right, they're playing, they're tinkering. They might have a free, clients that they're coaching for free, or maybe one or two little one-on-ones or whatever it may. So they're just tinkering with it. They're just playing with it, as opposed to seeing this for what it is, seeing the opportunities, seeing the potential, seeing the ability to serve others and to make a great income, 6-figure, 7-figure, multiple 7-figure on an annual basis, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow. I've got a small team of 15. Again, I work out of the house here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. We've got all the freedom and so on and so forth because of the systems. We've got AI now. So as an example, what used to take us working with my clients, say a month to design and develop their course and their program and how they're going to help and serve their clients. We've got AI course builders now where you could punch in a little bit who you help and how you help them. And literally within 3 minutes, it'll map it all out. And then we customize it and set it up, create the content around it. So to be able to have a 7-figure course, to have a world-class course where you can make a huge difference in people's lives, way easier than it used to be in the past because of AI and because of some of these new technologies. We've got voice cloning. We could do short form videos now with cloning. There's all kinds of cool things, and it's just on the forefront of this. Again, we're just getting started with all these new technologies, these new developments. So to answer your question, yep, it is crowded. No doubt about it. We are in a trust session, so nobody trusts each other. So by getting yourself out there, for instance, being on this podcast, right? Again, we now have the ability to connect with people all around the world instantly. They've got services like Podmatch it's like dating, speed dating for podcasters and guests. And, they hook you up through the algorithms. And so things that we never had 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, to be able to connect and to be able to get in front of way more people, the ideal people, to truly make a difference. So it's all about exposure. It's getting in front of more of the right people and then building that brand with authenticity, with vulnerability. Again, building that bond of trust through telling your story. You've heard the phrase, facts tell, stories sell. And so when you can design and develop a really powerful story based on your personal experience, both the origin as well as the conversion, what's in it for your potential client, that's where you're going to get people's attention and certainly be able to grow the business and again, we haven't slowed down at all. Our business just continues to grow and grow and grow. Same with our clients, but you got to know what you're doing these days, because if not, it's going to be tough. You're going to flounder because you're going to compete with all these other coaches who are part-time hobbyists as opposed to really owning a business.
How do you focus on being like a really crafting a really good story? How do you become a master storyteller? Because as you said, a lot of people might use facts or figures or different things, but really in sales or even communication, it's storytelling. Every time I've talked to an author, that's the secret sauce. You have to be able to tell that story.
You got it.
It's going to make somebody want to stay in the book.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Where you're going to be able to hook them in to listen long enough to where they actually take interest and build a bond of trust with you. So you nailed it. Again, we've got a 5-step process that we use with our clients in terms of helping them to grow these businesses. Step number 1 in the process, and the most important and the most foundational, is story selling. So it's about designing and developing. You can't just go out there and just wing it, throw it out of your mouth and hope something sticks or lands. It's got to be out of design. And so there's really 2 formats. One's called the origin, so the piece of the story, which is more of the like I was sharing with you, where I've been and how I went golfing and how I met Sandy. And so the personal piece, right? The emotional piece, the pain-centered piece, where we went through the challenges, we went through the blow-ups, we went through the cost and the pain and all these things that people can relate to. So when you're vulnerable, when you can truly be vulnerable without being a victim. So it's that fine line. Again, we don't want to, oh, woe is me, victim thing, which nobody wants to be around that. But when you can tell your story from an authentic place of the pain that you experience, the cancer that you experience, whatever it is, again, it doesn't have to necessarily be cancer, but we've all had our challenges. So we need to design that, to build that into the first minute or 2 of your story so that we can, number 1, get somebody's attention, and we could build that bond of trust. Again, if they don't trust you, they're not going to listen to the remainder of your story. They just don't care. But if they trust you, they're like, this guy's got an interesting story. He's been around, he's been through some stuff and was able to come through the other side in terms of how you grew and grow from that. So that's the origin piece. The conversion piece is critically important too. And so the conversion piece is, what's in it for me? So your listener is going to be saying, okay, cool. Phantom, I love your story. It sounds like you had the cancer, you got through it. That's all cool. But what's in it for me? What can you do for me? Why am I here? Right? Why am I going to give you another minute of my time, which is an enormous amount of time for people these days, right? We're in the instant TikTok swipe generation right now. 15 seconds is, it's a marathon. So we need to be like, again, the origin. So we build that bond of trust, and then the conversion, which is all about what I call message to market. And so understanding exactly who your market is. We got to understand them inside out. What are their demographics and their psychographics and their pain and what they're willing to pay for? What do they ultimately want? Called the golden result. So the specific tangible result that we can serve and support our clients with, we got to figure that thing out. What are they ultimately willing to pay for? And so once we figure that out, then we build our messaging into this whole story brand message, to the point where we share the origin piece and then also who we help and exactly how we get them or how we support to get them to the thing, whatever it is, whether it's a better relationship or to lose weight or to have better performer or communicator or make more money or whatever it is. We got to know exactly who our clients are, what do they want to need, and then how do we get them there to have a demonstrated process that will allow them to do that. What we do is we teach our clients to combine the origin as well as the conversion into about a 3.5-minute story. And we create a video around this. And as you can imagine, 3.5 minutes goes fast. I mean, man, you blink and that thing's over. So it's all out of design. The hero's journey. You think about Hollywood, you look at these movies that are, that are the Titanic, right? Again, so we've got that whole story of the rich guy versus the poor guy. And all of that is overcoming the challenges that really gets people's attention. And again, most importantly, builds that bond of trust. If they don't trust you, they're not going to talk to you.
But you need that hook to kind of draw them in and then
Yep.
make them feel like it's worth staying.
Yep.
So it's like that elevator pitch, you're in the elevator and the executive comes in, you're middle manager, you want to move up and you got to have that elevator pitch to say, well, why would they want to put me on their team?
Right.
Like I have to be able to hone that and be able to put that across to be able to get to the goal. What's the goal? And a lot of people like you have to figure out how do you do that um, and actually make it work. And I think that's like what a coach is going to teach you how to do.
Out of design. Yeah, yeah, you can't just wing it. Again, we this day and age, because it's so loud and it's so congested, just to even be able to get somebody's attention, a potential client, we've got to be a 10 on a 10 scale in
Mhm.
terms of your story. Like it has got to be good. It's got to be damn good with the conversion. Well, like, wow, the pain that you went through and the blow up and the breakthrough and what you learned and how you grew and how you became the hero through that entire process. And then again, the message to market, which is what you can do for them very specifically. So in your reference, the elevator pitch, right? Again, old school sales. We get in the elevator, you've got 10 seconds to share something. So if we're going to do that effectively, we got to know exactly who we're talking to. And not only who we're talking to, what do they ultimately want so that we could speak directly into their listening. And this is a big mistake I see so many coaches and entrepreneurs these days is, it's all about them because they're excited, they're passionate about whatever it is, and not being able to speak directly into the listening of their ideal client. So that's why so many coaches are flailing, why they're not converting, why they're not booking appointments is because they're not making that connection, that message to market, your story to build the bond of trust, and then your messaging, which is how you help them to get to their goals. So we got to understand who they are and what are their goals, right? What are they willing to pay for? And then you've got a documented process to be able to get them there. Because here's the reality again, in our trust recession, what we're all looking for is a high level of certainty, right? People are coach shopping. If you're going to go out and hire a coach, it's like, all right, just show me exactly how you're going to get me to X,
Like a
Y, Z.
bang for
What
the
is
buck.
your process? Yeah. What's the ROI? If I'm going to invest 5 grand, what's my return on investment? And you show me how you're going to help me to get it. I'll do the work. But if you got a process and a program, which of course is the importance of having a world-class program and a course to be able to work with and support your clients in that journey.
I think they have to see themselves like in what I think the audience has to, to understand it, they have to have the empathy, right, for the character or for the story
Yep. Yep.
and see themselves in the story. Cause I think that's what most people they connect. It's like this frequency thing. Like if you're a musician, right, you have situational awareness, right? If you're playing and it's not hitting, then you have to adjust it so you're on in the right frequency so the crowd picks up your vibe, right?
Vibe, baby.
It's
It's
all
all about the vibe.
it's
Yep.
a vibe, and well, how do you actually turn that into something real? Because, like musicians, we can tell you when sometimes some of us I can't tell you because like, well, I just know when I'm vibing and I know when I'm not. But it's like,
Right.
well, how do you actually turn that into something like I can predict that? So it's like an algorithm. Because my other day job is I'm a software designer, so I have a little brain, right brain going on,
Hmm.
where I try to take my creative ideas and have them seep into my you know logical ideas.
Right. Exactly. The best of both worlds, right? From each individual aspect. But that's right. It's creativity. It goes back to just getting out of our own way, getting out of our heads is so critically important and getting clear about what we want. And I know it sounds simple, sounds straightforward, like we've heard this before like a million times.
Hard to
But the
execute.
reality, yeah, to ask ourselves, are we living it? It's one thing to have the theory, it's one thing to have the good ideas, but it's the other thing to actually experience this stuff on a daily basis, to have that happiness and have that bliss. And if you're not, man, let's take a look at it. What's going on? What do you need to do to be able to move beyond that?
Can you share a transformational story from one of your clients that you could share with the audience?
Oh gosh, I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of the years. Remember, I've been doing this over 25 years. So, number one, we've got over 5,000 clients that we've served over the years. We've got over 500 of them now earning over $250,000 per year with their coaching businesses. We've showed them step by step by step. So the money's nice. Again, the things are nice, the security, but you nailed it early in the talk today, peace of mind. The biggest thing that I've personally experienced, and certainly to be able to work with other clients, is to give them that sense of peace of mind, whether they're in corporate and they hate their jobs, They hate their bosses. They're just sick of it, day to day to day, and they don't see a way out. Again, that's where most people are. Over 70% of people are in that place and living in that day to day to day because they don't know that there's something better on the other side. But being able to show them that there is options, there are possibilities, there are ways to be able to move beyond the pain and the frustration and the overwhelm and the boss that you hate, right? All those types of things to create a life of freedom and to be able to have that peace of mind, knowing that the money is handled. You've got your own time to do the things that you want to do. You've got amazing relationships. It just shows up in every aspect of your life. So yeah, in terms of transformation, I've seen it over and over and over the years, thousands of times, and continue to do so because it's working with people that are willing to step beyond their fears and their overwhelms to create something that they truly love.
Yeah, sometimes we get comfortable in kind of the situation. There's like a codependency with your bad boss, with your toxic boss. Because like, well, I get a paycheck, so I know I'm getting that, but you're not happy, right? So
Right.
so if you're in that kind of rat race, circular motion, and you're the road warrior, but you can't, you might have the money, but you can't really enjoy it because you're always on the road,
Yeah.
right? So like if you're always on that hamster wheel, like at some point you have to say, well, like, do I deserve to get off?
Yeah.
Right? I think a
Ooh,
lot
that's
of
a
times
good one.
people don't feel they deserve to actually have a life. And I think that's probably the thing that stops them from getting where they need to be.
Totally. Yep. And that's, of course, outdated belief systems. That goes from way back in the wiring and how they grow up and their parents and all kinds of things. But I think one of the things that we really saw through COVID, is it gave us all an opportunity to pause for a little while, to kind of step back and say, well, am I on the path that I really want to be on? Right? Am I really happy? Do I like my boss? Do I like my job? Yeah, I got a check. Great. I've got some comfort maybe with that check. However, if you're miserable, now's the time to pivot. Again, it's a wake up call, especially for those of us a little older, a little wiser in our 50s and beyond. We've seen so much of this stuff, and I think the older that we get and the wiser we become as a result of that, the more that we realize how quickly time is moving now. I mean, that clock is ticking. And if
Mhm.
we're not living the lives that we truly love, like doing the stuff that we really want to do, having that freedom, having the money, having the options, having the choices, man, we got to step into that and say, all right, am I willing to take a risk? I think that's the big one. People are so afraid to take a risk,
Risk
to
averse.
lose that convenience of that paycheck. Oh my God, if I didn't have a guaranteed check, how would I feed myself? What would I do? And it's interesting. They say that less than 10% of the world of human beings are entrepreneurs, meaning like they're out there making their own money, doing their own thing, doing what it takes to be able to continue to bring that income in. Because most people, over 90%, just don't have the intestinal fortitude, right? They don't have the ability to like see beyond the day-to-day paycheck in terms of what's truly possible. And of course, as we all know, the growth, the happiness, the expansion is outside of our comfort zone
Yep.
every time. And so by pushing out, yeah, it's scary. Yeah, it takes a little risk. But here's the question I got for you. If not now, when? Right? Look at our world. Look at post COVID. It's like all these changes, all these craziness. It's like, man, oh man, time to make a move. Time to step up and to really create the stuff that you want.
Yeah, because there's a big, we're in a major transformational moment
Yep.
in terms of the AI and the robotics all kind of colliding at the same time. And so if you're somebody that's like, well, I'm working this Fortune 500 company and I've been in this role where, there's a lot of AI and automation and robotics that's going to take away
Yeah.
your comfort zone, right? Which was not comfortable in the first place. Because
Exactly.
you would, so then you're going to be forced to kind of get into this, which would kind of kick you in the butt to say, maybe I need to take some of these ideas I had. And because there's like all these technologies that I can scale things with the AI, with the robotics, you with 3D printers. It's like there's a lot of stuff that you could do as a
Yep.
micro business that you
Yep.
could have never done 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yep.
And so
Without
these
doubt.
things that you could get into with the right coaching and the right advice and consulting, that you could take your ideas and actually be your own boss.
Yeah,
And like that's where people have to like figure out like who's gonna help serve my dream. Who's gonna
exactly.
help me like enable that dream,
Yeah,
to self actualize. I always talk about like David Bowie, like self actualized,
yeah.
right? He took the idea of Ziggy, this fantasy character, and he made it happen. It's all in his head. It was all made up, right? It was this character theatrics, but
You
he took
got it.
that and he
And
made
and
it happen.
and probably some good LSD at the time too, I would imagine, right?
But he tried to, play like the Beatles. He tried to be like David Jones, and he tried to, wear the suit and tie, and he looked like that. And then he said, "Well, what if I take it out there?
Yeah.
What if I go and take theater and science fiction and throw all this stuff out?
Yep.
And
What if?
what if you
Yeah.
do that and you actually become that person? What if you were like a method actor? What
Yep.
if you actually indulge like a very radical thing to do?" And he did. And then he
You got it.
continued to shapeshift. As he was like, he had this statement. He said, "I get bored unless I'm treading water artistically. I have to put
Yeah.
myself in situations where I might be treading water. Like I'll go sing with Luther Vandross. I know he sings better than me. I'll play with Stevie Ray Vaughan. I know he plays better than me. But I'm going to those people, working with Brian Eno, because I want to push myself
Yeah.
into a place where I wasn't comfortable,
Yep.
but I'm going to get a
Outside.
new result."
You got it. Outside that comfort zone. You just absolutely. And I think one of the reasons why people are so afraid to do that is we all feel like we got to have a sense of certainty about our future. Like we got to know what's happening in the future. We got to know what's happening tomorrow. And like, man, if I don't know, like what if things change? What if? But when we can, right? When we can get to the point of just letting go of that and surrendering and realizing like, man, things are going to change. There are things that are outside of our control. However, when we can step back and say, what do I really want? Like start there, pull out a pad of paper. Get as simple as you possibly can and start writing out, what do you want? Just dream again. I think so many people just stop dreaming because they're so stuck on this path and they're so miserable because they feel like they need to know what the future holds for them. But as we know, with politics, with everything else going on, we have no idea, really, from the big perspective, what the future holds. But when we can get excited about it, when we can see this as like an opportunity to be creative, you mentioned AI and some of these new technologies that are coming on, there's going to be so many opportunities for all of this, whether it's within coaching or being an entrepreneur or having your own business. And I mean, like we've never had before in history for those who are open minded, for those who are willing to get out of their own way, to move beyond fear and be okay with not knowing what tomorrow brings. To be able to be in the moment and be present and take a risk because when you do, you're going to overcome that fear. You're going to get super excited. You're going to get super passionate. And man, shit's going to start shining. It's going to get really bright and really exciting for you.
Yeah, I think it's a good strategy to kind of, be that David Bowie treading water to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Even in like in the IT world or software world, we can't just we got people that say, well, I'm a COBOL mainframe guy, and that's what they stay as. But a lot of times in our industry, things just shift, exponentially. Now we're living in the AI world. It's not at all what the COBOL mainframe world was, and so in my role as in that role, I've had to kind of reinvent myself all the time because the
Yeah.
technology is always exponentially changing. And sometimes you might go into a role and you're not the machine learning expert, but you've done some coursework, you've done some work, and you take the risk. It's like, hey, I'm going to jump into this role, but I'm passionate about it and I want to learn, and you put yourself into it and you can push yourself into things where you're a little bit over your head, but because you've got the passion to do it, that you're going to do the work. And I think that's where you kind of have to be on that kind of needle's edge,
Yeah.
razor's edge. To
The
kind
the
of,
bleeding edge of AI,
yeah,
in a lot of respects. And it's interesting because I've got, people, for instance, my parents, and God bless them, they're in their 80s and so on and so forth, but they're like, oh, this AI stuff. They're just going to come. I don't even want to know what this stuff is. They're just coming to sell me stuff and they're trying to this and trying to that. And I smile And I grin. I'm like, there are a lot of people that feel probably the way that you do. And, by being closed off, they're never going to learn. They're never going to be open. They're never going to be able to truly experience the possibilities and the options that we have now. So my advice is be open, man. Don't be closed, right? Open mind, open to opportunities, open to changes, and not have to, again, know what the future holds for us. Be excited about the unknown as opposed to afraid of the unknown.
Well, the
One
unknown,
slight little paradigm shift makes all the difference.
well, the unknown is like that's the X kind of factor, but that's like the known. The unknown is
Wow.
the known unknown. So, because there's
Right?
always something that you don't know,
Yeah.
and you're trying to look for predictability, right? So you never know when that unpredictable thing's going to happen. But if you're in the point where it's not like chaos theory, but like if you're more willing to be in a flow state and take things as they come, and it's kind of this is an example of music, right? If you're a musician, like a jazz musician, and somebody like Herbie Hancock plays the wrong chord, Miles Davis didn't stop the song. He changed his notes to match Herbie's chord, and it wasn't the original arrangement. But that's kind of like living in a moment and dealing with that chaos and not actually stopping the song, but evolving the song.
Right.
If you can learn how to roll with the punches,
Yep.
if you can roll with that no bad note, it's an opportunity to
Yep.
evolve the song mindset, then you're not going to be the guy saying, oh, this band keeps on ruining the song because they're not playing it the same way every day. It's like, well, maybe we shouldn't play it the same way every day.
Right. It's all about being creative. And like you mentioned, some of these the most amazing musicians out there in history, I'm sure it's, the first take didn't come, the second take, the third take, and it's just all continue to morph and get creative and creative and creative to where it is today. So again, being open to the possibilities.
So what are maybe top five best strategies used to attract and enroll ideal clients? Just off the cuff, like, do you have maybe?
Yeah, yeah. I'll just give you a couple that are really working right now. So again, this is all based on the fact that nobody trusts each other. So we got to lay that foundation. We are in the trust recession. So with that in mind, the most important aspect in terms of the process of attracting and enrolling clients is we got to build that bond of trust. If they don't trust you, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to book a discovery call. They're certainly not going to hire you and pay you money because there's so many people that, are the scammers and so on and so forth. It just is what it is. We are where we are. So it starts with building that trust. And so it could be social media shorts, right? So on social media, 45-second clips where you're talking about a specific tip or a specific advice within your business, we call it high value content
Mhm.
mapping. So it's, again, very specific in terms of what you do so that you can share with others that you know what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then they see you as a leader. They see you as an expert. Podcasts, another great thing. Why we're here, right? To be able to get on each other's podcast. Again, this day and age, we've got software that will hook us all up and connect us with the right audiences. So we could just get in front of each other's audiences and help and serve. And of course, there are going to be people out there that connect to the message and say, I want to learn more. And so it's building that bond of trust. It's positioning ourselves as the experts that we are by being in front of the right audience, whether it's through social or podcasting is definitely, if you don't have a podcast, I would highly recommend getting one. Again, if you're a coach, if you're somebody that really wants to get your message out and grow a business, it's quick, it's easy. The software has come so far. It's so much easier than it was even 3 and 4 or 5 years ago. The editing and everything else, you could do it on a shoestring budget. And then also being guests on other people's podcasts. So like we're doing here today, right? Sharing with each other. So podcasts definitely move in that direction. AI now is cloning. And so we're now at the stage now with companies like HeyGen and 11 Labs and others, where we can create voice content and video content using clones to the point where we can mass create and we can create content at scale now. So much quicker, much easier. You can't tell the difference between the real and quote unquote the clone. It's still your message. It's still you doing the thing, but it just saves you a fraction of the time. As an example, I used to go out and you go to ChatGPT, get my scripting all down, work through what I'm going to share in a 45-second video, go out and get the teleprompter, read the video, do all that, do the editing. So, I mean, it would take me probably 2.5, 3 hours for a
Yeah.
45-second video. Now we can go in with this AI from start to finish, from concept to publishing in about 6 minutes. And so it's scale, it's content at scale to be able to allow us to get in front of more of the right people to build that bond of trust. And so whether again it's speaking or podcasting or social content, and then also direct outreach through organic. One thing that we are noticing is paid advertising doesn't work like it used to. Back in the day, Facebook ads was the bomb. I mean, it worked. We got conversions. But again, we are in a trust recession. So
Yeah.
nobody trusts each other, especially ad. You see an ad, you're like, who is this person trying to sell me something? And we used to do that. I used to run ads back in the day, but we would get maybe a 10 to 20% conversion of people actually showing up for a discovery call, or we could talk about what they want to need, which is horrible and expensive. Whereas with organic, we use social media channels like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, where we're actually building relationships. We're building conversations through the DMs and others. Of course, we got software that manages this and teams to be able to support us, but it's true, authentic connections.
Yeah.
It's
You
like
want
really,
yeah,
we're
they're
building
organic.
relationships.
Yeah, they're organic, because if all the ad buys, used to work, they don't seem to work now. It seems like the
Nope.
podcast, or if you run a reel on LinkedIn, and people on LinkedIn, advertising might be better bang for the buck from what I've
Yep.
seen lately.
Without doubt.
But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a different focus. I used to be just an audio podcast, then it became a video podcast.
Yeah.
We do AI generated reels on
Yeah.
TikTok, and it brings people in, because it will take this hour-long podcast and it'll trade 30-second, 45-second TikToks.
Yeah.
And with the link to the person's business, or the link to the overall landing page where they
Oh,
can
yeah.
get more information. And we get a lot more you return viewers, or people actually watching that and then going to YouTube or going to Apple, whatever platform where they feel comfortable on
Yeah.
watching us. But we make sure we're on as many platforms as we can be, because then we don't know, is this person an Apple person or this person a Spotify person? Well, we'll be on both. They can watch
Exactly.
wherever they want.
Yep. Syndicate. That's exactly, it's repurposing. So it's creating one body of content, for instance, in a podcast, which is pretty simple to do, right? We get on and just chat for an hour, right? Back and forth. And then now taking that and using software like Opus Clip. I highly recommend it. It's called Opus Clip. Literally, you'll pop in your video there, and the AI will go through and will segment that. It'll repurpose it into whatever length you want, 1 minute, 3 minutes, whatever. It'll add B-roll. It'll add captions. It'll do all that kind of stuff for you with the push of a button. So you create the content for an hour, and what we can do with this now is we can create 25 to 50 videos that we could then schedule through a distribution or syndicated software that'll send it to all of the social media platforms to get us in front of the right people.
Yeah.
So it's visibility is what it's at.
Just use the tools, and it's like, this is like, an artifact. It's like your resource. It's like each podcast becomes a resource that can be mined to actually focus on certain key points, and then push that to your overall business plan, or what you want to do for your strategy. And that's why it's great, because like you don't know what you have until you start mining it and looking at, I actually have something here that I could repurpose and reuse, and recycling's good.
It really is. I mean, it's just, and it's not like we're, being lazy, right, or doing anything wrong here. It's actually being very smart, because we now have the software that allows us to do this and to be able to save a ton of time. Again, it's building that bond of trust is what this is about. Connecting with the right people, the right audience who have a want, they have a need, they have a desire. We share our professionalism. We share our experience by giving value, giving tips, tools, resources, and then letting the chips fall where they may. So rather than chasing clients, chasing people, come on, you need to work with me, and here's why. What we do is we allow people to see us in action through syndicating and through repurposing and through the software, and let them make the decide. So we're attracting them to us as opposed to chasing them. Again, you mentioned the law of attraction. There's a huge law of attraction here. It's all about the vibe, putting out that high vibe with the right people, the people you can best help, and let the chips fall where they may, baby.
So if people click on lifestylebusinessquest.com, what will they find there? Because we're closing out at this point, but
Yeah, you got it. So I've got a kick-ass free masterclass. So it's a 14-minute video training that shows you exactly how to do this, right? If you're thinking about wanting to become a coach or build a coaching business or scale a coaching business, this shows you our simple 5 steps. It's got the screenshots. It shows you all the software we talked about. I've got a blueprint. I've got a checklist. All that stuff is all downloadable for you. So it's quick, easy, 14 minutes, free. And so if you're even interested or remotely interested in building a coaching business or growing and scaling a coaching business, if you already have, check it out. I think you're going to dig it. And if I can support you in any way, I would certainly love to do anything I can for you.
That's great. Well, I appreciate it. I think our audience will appreciate it. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast. I think it's been really enlightening, all the things that you've brought to the table tonight. And thank you again for being on the show.
You bet. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.